Hey guys, and welcome back. Today we'll look at internet horror stories, and if you like them, you can like, comment, and turn on notifications so you don't miss new videos. Grab some snacks and your favorite drink, and let's go. So I take transit home every day. It takes me about 2 hours, and my last bus is 45 minutes long. By that last stop, I am worn down from work and pain. I worked with homeless youth then, so I did not panic because someone looked rough or talked to themselves. My plan every night was simple. Headphones in, sit near the middle, keep my mobility device close, get off near my house, and make it inside before the street went empty. While I'm waiting for that bus, I see a homeless man pacing back and forth with his cart. Normally, I don't care about things like that because I work with homeless youth, but I noticed he kept staring at various women and even tried to start up a conversation with one. She moved away fast, and he watched her too long after that. That put me on alert, so I put in my headphones to signal that I'm not open to conversation. The bus came late, and everyone moved forward like they were tired of waiting. I waited at the back because I move slower than most people. That was when he noticed me for real. I got on, tapped my card, and sat by the window near the middle. Then he notices me when the bus pulls up and gets on the same bus as me. He came on without his card, which felt wrong, then walked past empty seats and sat down next to me. I kept my eyes on the window because eye contact can turn into a fucking invitation. He started talking, but at first I didn't notice because I had my headphones in and I'm hard of hearing. When I turned in his direction to see what stop we were at, he took that as an invitation that I was open to talking to him. I shook my head once and looked down at my phone. That should have been enough, but he started getting angry that I was not talking to him. I could hear him over my headphones, not clear words, just rage. A few passengers looked over, then looked away like the floor mattered more. I texted one of my guy friends and told him there was a man beside me who would not leave me alone. My friend asked where I was, and I typed the route with my thumb shaking. I kept trying to shrink the whole thing in my head. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe if I ignored him hard enough, he would get bored. Then I noticed in my peripheral vision that he starts touching himself over his jeans. I froze because your brain starts doing math. If I got up, would he grab me? If I yelled, would anyone help? If I waited until my stop, would he follow me home? My real stop lets off too close to my place, and I pictured him learning my door. My friend called me, and I rejected it because the ringing might set him off. He called again, and I rejected it again. I texted that I was getting off early near the shopping center. It had lights, cameras, and people, or at least I told myself that. I pulled the cord 2 stops early and stood before the bus fully stopped. The man went quiet the second I stood up, and that scared me more than the yelling. The doors opened. I stepped down as fast as I could without falling, and this man gets off at the same stop as me. I try to rationalize it as it being a shopping center, so maybe he's just going to hang out there. Then I glanced back and saw him standing a few yards behind me, not looking at stores or traffic, just looking at me. I did not run because I cannot run well, and some men see running as permission. I dipped into the closest building, which was Panda Express. It was bright and busy enough, but the smell of food made me sick because my stomach locked up. I got in line so I could look like I belonged. Outside, I saw him through the glass, smoking a cigarette near the door, waiting for me. My friend kept texting me to call the police, but I did not want to make a scene. I wanted him to get bored and leave without me explaining fear to strangers. So I ordered food to buy time. My card slipped against the counter because my hand was shaking. Here's my fuck up. I start eating toward the back of the building where I can still turn around and see if he's there because I hope my back would signal I'm not interested. Every few bites, I check the window. He was still outside at first, smoking down to the filter. Then he disappeared, and I told myself he had finally left. When I turned around to check again, he was not outside anymore. He was sitting in the booth right behind me with his back to me. Not across the room, not near the door, not random. Right behind me, sharing the same booth divider, close enough to feel him lean back. I had not heard him come in through the front door. Somehow, while I was watching him, he got behind me. I stared at my tray and felt my skin go cold. One of his hands was low under the table, and his shoulders moved. I snapped the lid onto my food, spilled sauce on my fingers, and shoved the container into my mobility device. My fork hit the floor, and his head tilted like he had waited for that sound. I grabbed my bag and made for the exit as fast as possible. I did not look at his face because eye contact felt dangerous. My hip hurt, my hands were shaking, and I stumbled off the curb. At that point, my friend called again, and this time I answered because I needed a real voice in my ear. I started speed walking home from the shopping center about a mile from my house, which is a lot for me. Before I left the parking lot, I looked back through the Panda Express window. He was still inside, but now he had turned around in the booth and was facing the glass. He threw his arms up and started yelling at me through the window. People finally stared because his anger had become public. That should have made me feel safer, but it did not. I kept walking as fast as my body would let me, telling my friend each street I passed. The shopping center lights faded behind me, and the street turned into fences, parked cars, and windows with the blinds shut. Every reflection looked like movement, and every slow car made my chest tighten. I kept imagining him ahead of me somehow, knowing my route. Once I stopped behind a van and forced myself to turn around. The sidewalk was empty, but that did not calm me down because I truly did not know how long he had been behind me in the restaurant. My friend stayed on the phone with me until I reached my block. I did one last check before turning toward my place because I refused to show my door. I got inside, locked the door, locked the chain, then checked both again like locks had become complicated. That was when the shaking really started after I finally stopped moving. I sat on the floor with sauce leaking into my mobility device and my phone still pressed to my ear. My friend talked to me until I calmed down, but I kept seeing the back of that man's head in the booth behind me. He had been close enough to reach me before I knew he was inside. For the rest of the week, I was taking Ubers home, which cost around $40 each time because I was scared to see him again. I hated paying for fear, and I hated that he probably forgot me while I was deciding what safety cost that night. Thankfully, I haven't seen him at the bus stop since, but I hope he never comes back. I live in a pretty big apartment complex with multiple towers and 4 apartments on each floor. We live on the 12th floor, so random people wandering around up here at 1 a.m. isn't exactly normal. I was 17, home alone for a few hours, and that was the whole deal. My brother was at a sleepover in the next tower, my parents were driving back from out of town, and my plan was to play games, keep my phone close, and open the door when they called from the parking level because our intercom barely worked. The night was boring at first, which is why I remember it too clearly. I had one side of my headset off because my mom hated when I missed calls. The apartment was quiet enough that the fridge and pipes sounded like they were doing it on purpose. Around 1 in the morning, I heard scratching near the front door. It was not a knock, just nails dragging over painted wood. I paused the game and listened, but I did not panic right away because stray dogs got into our complex all the time. People fed them near the lobby, service doors stayed open, and one filthy mutt had made it to the 9th floor once. The scratching stopped, then started lower down, near the floor. I stood in the hallway with my phone in my hand, and waited for it to leave. Then it moved higher, slow, and careful, and that was when it stopped feeling like an animal. Dog scratched messy. This sounded like something testing the door. Then the doorknob moved. It did not rattle like a drunk neighbor had the wrong apartment. It turned a little, stopped, and turned again, slow enough that I heard the metal click inside the lock. My chest tightened, and then anger kicked in because I hated feeling scared inside my own home. I slammed my palm against the door so hard the chain jumped. Everything outside went silent. I expected barking, footsteps, somebody cursing, anything that made sense. Instead, the hallway went dead. I pressed my eye to the peephole, even though every part of me hated doing it. At first, I saw the opposite wall, the dirty tiles, and the yellow light by the stairwell door. Then I saw him. There was a barefoot man standing outside my door in an old, dirty tracksuit. He had stepped back like I had startled him, but he had not left. His feet were gray with dirt, and one heel had a dark smear on it. His mouth hung open a little, and his head leaned forward like he was listening through the wood. He stared straight at my door with his eyes wide open. I waited for him to blink, because that would have made him look human. He did not blink while I watched him. He just stared at the door like he knew exactly where I was standing behind it. My brain got stuck on one question. How the fuck did he get up here barefoot without anybody seeing him? Then he started walking toward my door again. He took one slow step, then another, eyes still fixed on the door. He was not checking the apartment number or looking around like he was lost. I backed away and slammed my fist into the door again. I yelled that I was calling security, and my voice cracked like a scared kid's voice because that was exactly what it was. His head jerked up, and he spun around so fast he almost slipped. Then he sprinted toward the stairwell, not the elevator, and the stairwell door banged open hard enough to echo. I heard his bare feet slapping down the steps until the sound dropped away below me. I locked the chain again, even though it was already locked, shoved the shoe rack against the door, and called the security desk. Nobody picked up. I called again, then called the guard's mobile number, and that one rang until it cut off. We paid every month for cameras and guards, and the one time I needed someone, the desk was useless. I called my mother next, and the signal kept breaking because they were still on the highway. When she finally understood, my father told me to lock everything, stay away from the door, get a knife, and not look through the peephole again. My mother kept asking whether I knew the man, whether he seemed drunk, whether he had said anything. He had not said one word, and that bothered me more every minute. I sat on the kitchen floor with a knife in my hand and listened to the building. The elevator clicked somewhere above me, and I pictured him standing inside it with those dirty feet. I told myself he had run away, but that thought would not stay in place. About 20 minutes later, I heard the stairwell door open softly. I froze so hard the knife handle slipped in my sweaty palm. There was a dragging sound in the hallway, then a pause, then another soft scrape. I did not go to the peephole this time because I pictured and I pressed against the other side, waiting for mine. The strip of hallway light under it broke in two places. Something brushed the gap near the floor. A folded piece of paper slid under the door, dirty corner first, and stopped halfway inside our apartment. That was when I understood he had not just wandered here. He had run away, waited, come back quietly, and pushed something in like a message. I called emergency services then, not security. I told the operator there was a man outside my apartment, that he had tried the handle, left, returned, and pushed something under the door. While I talked, the paper moved another inch, and I nearly dropped the knife. Police came with two guards who suddenly remembered how to work. My parents arrived almost at the same time, and my mother grabbed me so hard it hurt. I tried to act calm, but the second she touched me, my knees went loose. They found one dirty footprint on the landing between the 11th and 12th floors. Nothing else. The guard kept saying maybe it was a resident from another tower, maybe someone confused had taken the wrong stairs. My father told him confused residents do not creep back to shove paper under a teenager's door. One officer unfolded the paper with a napkin from our kitchen. It was a torn delivery receipt, damp at the edges and scratched so hard it almost ripped. There were no normal words on it, just circles, crooked lines, and one part where our apartment number had been written again and again until the ink became a black dent. The cameras gave us almost nothing. Nobody matching him entered through the lobby. Nobody barefoot rode the elevator to our floor. The stairwell camera near the ground floor had been broken for months, and the service doors between towers were supposed to lock, but people propped them open with bricks. So the official answer became that some unstable stranger got inside, climbed 12 floors barefoot, tried our door, came back with that receipt, and vanished through a blind spot. For weeks after that, I stopped wearing headphones. I checked the hallway before leaving the apartment, even in the morning. My parents changed the lock and installed a camera. Still, I kept waking up because I thought I heard paper scraping over tile. What still messes with me is that he ran when I made noise, then came back after learning I was scared and alone. He changed his approach. He got lower. He got quieter. Something was working inside his head, and whatever it was, it had picked our door. A couple of hours later, when my parents got home, I called again and asked if anyone matching that description had been seen around the complex. Nope. I was 6 years old in Winnipeg in 1991, and my family was already living through hell before that van ever showed up. My 10-year-old sister, Robin, had just died, and I was the only child left, so every adult looked at me like one more bad thing would finish the house. My mom needed me somewhere safe for a few hours, and I needed to get away from funeral flowers, casseroles, and people crying in the kitchen. So I went to Holly's place because she lived close, her mom knew my mom, and the plan was simple: ride our bikes around the block until we got tired, then come inside like normal kids. Nothing felt wrong at first, and that still makes me sick. Her mom told us to stay on the block. Then we pushed off into a warm afternoon with sprinklers ticking over lawns. For a few minutes, I almost felt like a regular kid again. We made one lap fast, then another one slower, and on the third lap, I heard an engine coming up behind us. It had this choking rattle, like metal was grinding under the hood. I looked back and saw a dirty white freezer-looking van with no back windows and rust along the bottom. At first, I thought it was delivering something, because that is how a kid explains a van. But it did not pull into a driveway or pass us. It came up beside us and slowed until it matched our bikes. Holly stopped pedaling first, and I stopped because she stopped. We rolled to the curb like maybe some adult needed directions. The passenger window was already rolled down, which means they were ready before they reached us. The inside looked black, like daylight could not get in there. The man in the passenger seat leaned forward, and I can still see him too clearly. He had long frizzy hair, hollow cheeks, and dirty yellow teeth. He did not smile or ask where our parents were. He looked past us at the lawns and houses, checking who could see. That was when my stomach went cold, even though I still did not think the word kidnapping. I just knew an adult was acting wrong in a way I could not explain. Then the passenger door opened, and his boot dropped onto the pavement like he had already made up his mind. At the same time, the side door made a heavy metal clunk and scraped back a few inches. I saw a black crack open in the side of the van, and something shifted inside like people moving in the dark. The man turned toward that darkness and said it loud enough for us to hear, "You grab one, I'll grab the other." Those words hit my body before they made sense in my head. Holly moved first, and I followed like my bones had been yanked by a rope. We shoved our feet down so hard our bikes wobbled because some part of us understood that if we waited another second, hands would be on us. The van moved behind us, coughing and rattling as the driver hit the gas. Holly cut across the street without checking for cars, and I followed because the van was on our side. My legs hurt, my hands slipped on the grips, and Holly's house felt impossibly far away. I thought about my mom waiting for me because I was all she had left. We hit Holly's driveway too fast, threw our bikes onto the grass, and ran for the door without trying to stand them up. Those bikes still bother me because they pointed straight at the house like bright little markers. For one awful second, I thought the front door was locked. Then the knob turned, and we fell inside more than we walked in. Holly's mom turned around angry because we slammed the door so hard the wall shook. Then she saw our faces, Holly crying without much sound while I fumbled with the lock. We tried to tell her, but it came out broken. I kept saying there was a van, there were men, the door was opening, and they said they were going to grab us. I could see her trying to make it into scraped knees or some dumb kid panic. Then the engine rolled past the house, rattling close enough to make the front window buzz. Holly's mom went still, like her whole body had locked around one thought. She moved the curtain with 2 fingers and looked through the gap, and I watched the color leave her face. The van crept past the driveway at walking speed, slow enough to feel deliberate. Our bikes were still on the lawn, so they knew exactly where we had gone. The passenger window faced the house, and Holly's mom pushed us back with one hand without looking away from the street. We listened to that engine knock and drag outside, and I imagined the sliding door opening again, this time right in front of the house. That was when I learned a house was not magic. A door was wood, a lock was metal, and an adult was just a person trying to stand between children and whatever wanted them. Holly's mom checked both doors and kept watching until the van turned at the end of the block. She would not let us go outside again for the rest of the afternoon. When she brought the bikes in, she opened the door only wide enough to squeeze through and drag them inside fast. I sat on the couch with a cup of water I never drank, shaking so hard my knees bumped the coffee table. Every car that passed the house made my stomach jump all over again. She called someone, maybe the police first, maybe my mom first, maybe both. I only caught pieces because adults were whispering around me again. When she repeated the part about grabbing us and said my mom's name, guilt settled over the fear because I knew what this would do to her. My mom came later, and I knew she had been crying before she reached the door. Holly's mom told her what happened, and when she repeated the line from the van, my mom made this small broken sound I still hear sometimes. She grabbed me and held me too hard, checking my hair, my arms, my shoulders like she had to prove I was there. My sister was already gone, and now I had come close enough to gone that my mother could feel the edge of it. Nothing came from it, at least not that I know. Maybe the police drove around, or maybe one more white van meant nothing without a plate number. We were 6 years old, so our evidence was a rattling engine, a windowless van, greasy hair, yellow teeth, and a sliding door opening into blackness. That was all we had, and it was not enough. People later told me I was lucky, and I know they meant well, but I still hate that word. Lucky sounds clean, and nothing about that afternoon was clean. 2 little girls almost stood beside a curb long enough for men to put hands on them in daylight. My family had just buried one child, and for a few seconds, the world reached for the other one too. I still tense when a bad engine idles near a sidewalk, and I still notice vans with no back windows, even when they're probably full of tools. When my own kids were small, I watched them harder than other parents did, because I had already learned how fast a normal afternoon could split open. The worst part, even now, is how casual he sounded when he said it. He did not whisper, he did not panic, and he did not care that we heard him. Maybe he thought we were too young to understand, or maybe he knew fear can freeze a kid in place. I do not know who they were, and I do not know if they ever got caught. I only know Holly and I got away, and I've spent my life wondering who did not. So to the man with the yellow teeth and the people in the back of that rattling white van, let's not meet. Hi, first-time poster here, and after reading so many stories, I figure I should finally put mine somewhere because I still think about it whenever I pass dead factory streets at night. Around 2 years ago, my friend Jenny planned her first real birthday party in years and rented a small venue above a little yard on the edge of an industrial area. My plan was simple: leave another party, meet Noah, show up for Jenny, stay long enough to support her, and go home before the night turned into some sunrise drug mess. Jenny was in active addiction then, and I'm not saying that to shame her because she is doing better now, but it mattered. She used whatever she could get: pills, powder, stuff I had never heard of, and most of her friends were people she used with. A week before the party, I asked how many people she had invited, and she said around 80, like that was normal. When I laughed, she snapped that some are people she barely knew, but they were chill, which bothered me, because every asshole who ruins a night is apparently chill until the second he ruins it. I told her it sounded like a bad idea, and she snapped that I was acting like her mother. She said she just wanted one good birthday where people came for her instead of whispering about her. That shut me up, because what do you say without sounding like a judgmental bitch? I promised I would come, and I promised I would not stand in the corner making faces at everybody. I had another party before hers, so by the time I left I was tipsy in that stupid way where bad ideas feel manageable. Noah met me outside, saw my face, and asked if I was sure we should go. We argued, because he wanted an exit plan, and I wanted to pretend this was normal friend support. Finally, we agreed to stay about an hour, keep our phones charged, and leave the second it felt wrong. The venue was on a street with barely anything around except factories and empty buildings. You entered through a tiny yard where people smoked, went through a door, and climbed stairs to the main room. Upstairs, there was a living room, a kitchen area, and a smaller DJ room off the side. It felt safe only as long as everybody decided to behave, which is a stupid thing to trust at a party full of strangers. At first, and I hate admitting this part now, I had fun. I scraped both knees open outside because I missed a step while laughing, and someone pointed me toward the first aid kit in the kitchen. I cleaned myself up, taped gauze over both knees, and remember thinking the party was not as bad as I expected. Around 1 a.m, though, the mood shifted just enough that people started pretending nothing had shifted. For guys that tried to get in, and only one of them had actually been invited. Some guys told them to leave, the uninvited ones pushed back, and there was a short fight near the entrance. People described it like nothing huge, just shoving, maybe a punch, everybody acting tougher than they were. I asked Jenny what happened, but she brushed me off and said it was handled. Her eyes were too wide, and Noah gave me that look that meant our 1-hour agreement had already expired. Maybe 20 minutes later, I wanted a cigarette, even though I barely smoked then. Really, I wanted air because upstairs smelled like sweat, beer, perfume, weed, and that sharp chemical smell people carry when they have been awake too long. I asked Noah to come with me, and he said he wanted to finish one conversation first. I almost got pissed because I was ready to go, but he seemed calm for once, so I waited near the kitchen and watched people drift around. When he finally came over, we headed toward the stairs together. That timing still digs into me more than I can explain. We turned the corner and found 6 or 7 people jammed at the top of the stairs like something had blocked them. Nobody moved down, nobody moved up, and the whole group leaned backward in this frozen way that made my skin go cold. I took one step back, turned toward Noah with a look that probably said what the fuck, and then the sound came from below us. It was not one scream, but several voices tearing together, followed by glass breaking so hard it sounded like a crate being thrown down the stairwell. The people in front of us jumped backward into us, and we stumbled toward the kitchen while more people surged up the steps. Somebody hit the wall, somebody grabbed my arm, and for 1 second my brain tried to make it a fire or a collapse. Then Oliver came up the stairs with blood pouring down his face, and my brain stopped trying to make it normal. Oliver was one of the few people there I knew by name, and he walked like he'd been switched off inside. Behind him came a guy I knew by sight, holding his nose while blood pushed through his fingers. Jason came after them, clutching his shoulder, and his girlfriend followed with her hands raised like she did not know where to put them. For 1 dumb second, I tried to be useful because I knew where the first aid kit was. Blood usually does not mess me up if I have something to do, so I pushed toward the kitchen after Oliver because people were yelling for towels. I thought he had glass stuck in his forehead from whatever had shattered downstairs. Then I got close enough to see him clearly, and there was something sticking out his forehead, but it was not glass. It was pale and hard and wrong. A piece of his own skull pushed outward where skin should have been. My hand was already reaching for the first aid kit, and it just stopped in the air like my body had unplugged itself. I did not faint. I did not scream, but I turned around and walked straight into the DJ room because my brain refused to stand near that thing. The bass was still thumping through the wall for a few seconds, which felt insane because people were bleeding 10 feet away and the music had not caught up to reality yet. Somebody finally cut it, and the silence after felt worse. All you could hear was panic, sobbing, shoes scraping on sticky floor, and someone yelling for emergency services. Those same guys who had been thrown out had come back with maybe 30 others carrying bats, steel pipes, and whatever else they could swing. They rushed the little yard and started hitting the first bodies they reached. They did not care who had kicked them out, who was invited, who was sober, who was a woman, or who even knew Jenny. They just swung at heads, faces, shoulders, anyone close enough to make a sound. The whole attack lasted maybe 30 seconds, and by the time we understood what was happening, they were already gone. I found Jason near the kitchen, still holding his shoulder and trying not to scare his girlfriend. They had been closest to the entrance, so they got hit first. His shoulder was dislocated, and his face had gone gray from pain, but he kept asking if she was okay. She had bruises coming up on her arms and a cut near her hairline, and that was when anger finally cut through the shock. Those cowards hit women too, because of course they fucking did. Jenny was losing her mind by then, crying, pacing, trying to count people, then forgetting who she had counted. Police and an ambulance came pretty quickly, though time had stopped behaving by then. The paramedics took one look at Oliver and moved with that scary calm medical people get when things are bad. Later we heard he needed surgery but survived and recovered, which should make the memory lighter, but it barely does. The cops were no help in a way that still makes me furious. One kept demanding names and descriptions like the attack had happened under studio lights with everybody sober and taking notes. Jenny kept choking on her words, and he barked at her until Noah stepped closer and told him to back off. After the ambulance left, the party emptied in this ugly, leaking way. People grabbed jackets, searched for phones, blamed each other, cried in corners, or vanished because they did not want cops asking what they had on them. Then I saw people scrubbing the staircase, and something in me snapped. There was blood on the steps, the railing, and the wall where hands had dragged across it. Someone had poured cleaner over everything, so the stairwell smelled like bleach mixed with iron and spilled beer. They scrubbed like if they got the stains out fast enough, the night could go back to being a party. I told Noah I needed to leave, and he did not argue. At his place, we sat on his floor until morning, still half-dressed, repeating the same details like repetition could turn them into something manageable. I kept coming back to the cigarette because if Noah had ended that conversation 1 minute earlier, we would have been on those stairs or in that yard. People later said it could have been worse, and they were right in the worst possible way. We lived in a rough area, and those guys could have had knives or guns instead of pipes. Jenny and I did not talk properly for a while after that. There was too much guilt between us, hers for inviting half the city and mine for being angry at her, even while knowing she did not swing a single bat. She is clean now, or at least fighting hard enough that it looks like survival, and I respect the hell out of her for that. Still, I do not go to random parties anymore, and I do not stand near stairwells without checking what is below me. Hands down, it was the worst party I have ever been to, and I hope nothing ever comes close to it again. So yeah, to those guys who ruined my friend's party, let's not meet again.